Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Text 8. Sa samhitam bhagavatim Hitvanukramya chatmajam Shukam madhyapayamasa Nivritti niratam munihi. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Shukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification, but even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of Parikshit Maharaj and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatvarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. This is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Pravritti Marga was condemned by Narada. That path is a natural inclination for all conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. So this chapter number 7, the son of Drona punished, and we are just seeing that Srila Vyasadeva, after receiving the instructions from Narad Muni about compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, is meditating on that, and here it is said that he has compiled it. In this verse, Sa Samhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam. There's a very important word mentioned here. Kritvanukramya. Kritvanukramya. How did he compile the Srimad Bhagavatam? Samhitam Bhagavatim. He compiled the Samhita. Samhita is the Vedic literature. The Bhagavatim. How? Kritva Anukramya. He compiled it. Anukramya. Anukramya is translated as correction and repetition. So Srila Vyasadeva very, very thoughtfully, knowing what is best for the suffering souls of this Kali Yuga, very thoughtfully, very carefully, very selectively took out the essence of the Vedic literatures and gave the best thing. He wrote the best thing. He compiled the best of the Vedic knowledge in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the highest knowledge. It is said there are two books that we know of very normally. One is the Bhagavad Gita and the other is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, if you go into the market, you will find many editions of Bhagavad Gita existing. Prabhupada himself said some, in hundreds of them are there. And of course our Bhagavad Gita, we know it is as it is. Prabhupada wrote it. But so many editions of Bhagavad Gita is existing, and in most of the editions of Bhagavad Gita, the speaker has not touched upon, the commentator of the Bhagavad Gita has not actually touched upon the real essence of Bhagavad Gita. He has used the verses of Bhagavad Gita, and to suit his own interest, he has commented in a different way. Either Nirvishesha commentation, Shunyavadi commentation, that there is no God, Nirvishesha, there is no form, he is impersonal, or there is voidness. Basically, no personality. And so many commentations of Bhagavad Gita are like that. And they are all in our ISKCON language, we call them as Mayavadis. Mayavadis means, he professes, there are many understandings of Mayavadis, and one of the understanding is that who teaches about the impersonal understanding of God, and for him that is ultimate. There is nothing to understand beyond the impersonal understanding of God, Brahman. There is no personality. This is what we understand in the Bhagavad Gita. But on the other hand, if you see, you will not generally come across a commentator commenting on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although Srimad Bhagavatam Sarva Vedanta Saram hi Sri Bhagavatam Ishyate. The Saram, the milk, the cream. It is said that Vedic literatures are like an ocean of milk. And in an ocean of milk, which is the best part of the milk, in a glass of milk, which is the best thing? The cream. So it is said that the Vedic literatures are compared to be like an ocean of milk, and the cream of this is supposed to be the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Vedanta Saram, the cream, the essence, is Srimad Bhagavatam. So while so many people, so many commentators have commented on the Bhagavad Gita to suit their own needs, why they have not commented on Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam is Sarva Vedanta Saram hi Sri Bhagavatam Ishyate. Srimad Bhagavatam is even more important. Prabhupada also said that Srimad Bhagavatam is the graduate study. Bhagavad Gita is the school study. So after schooling we graduate. So why the Mayavadi's commentator have not been able to comment or to touch Srimad Bhagavatam? So here it is mentioned, Prabhupada writes in one commentary, because the way Vyasadeva wrote Srimad Bhagavatam is Kritva, he wrote it. Anukramya. Anukramya means he wrote it, he corrected it, he revised it, and he left nothing for the Mayavadis philosophers to touch upon or to comment. Very clearly, very nicely he has described that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is a person, and he has made it so vivid, so clear, so elaborate, so nicely has presented it that there is no scope for speculation. You cannot speculate. To give you some few examples, let's take some verses from the Bhagavatam, then we will understand why the Mayavadi philosophers cannot touch upon Srimad Bhagavatam. Because in the Bhagavatam, very clearly the Supreme Person is mentioned. The best example is just the previous verse. In the previous verse, what is it mentioned? Yasyam vai shruyamanayam. We have to shruyamanayam. We have to hear. We have to hear about whom? Krishna Parama Purushe. Now very clearly it is mentioned Krishna. And who is Krishna? Is he impersonal? Parama Purushe. All three words, you cannot now play around with these three words. Krishna Parama Purushe is impersonal. Where is it impersonal? It is very clearly said Purushe. And not only it is said Purushe, Parama Purushe. Means he is the Parama Purusha, not an ordinary Purusha. And he has a name? Yes, his name is Krishna. So a name is there, a person is there, Purusha, and he is the Parama Purusha, Krishna. And it is that Parama Purusha, Krishna, whose pastimes we should hear. So it is so clearly mentioned. And when you hear the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what happens? Bhaktir utpadyate pumsaha shoka moha bhayapaha. Bhakti arises in our heart and shoka moha bhaya apaha. Apaha means these three things get extinguished, gets removed from our heart. What is that? Shoka means lamentation, moha means illusion, bhaya means fearfulness. So Krishna Parama Purushe. So many places. Another place it is said, Akamah sarva kamo va moksha kamodharadihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Again the word Purusha is used. And again it says Purusham param. He is not an ordinary Purusha. He is Purusham param. He is a supreme Purusha. Purusha means a person. Whether you have material desires or you have no material desires or you have desires to become one with the Brahman, tivrena bhakti yogena, with one pointed attention, we must worship, think of, glorify Purusha Param, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another place, Kunti Maharani is praying to Lord Krishna when Lord Krishna is about to go to Dwaraka. And this is the first verse of her prayer. We sometimes chant these prayers in the Bhagavatam, in the Srinivasa temple. There's a string of many verses. And the first verse, the first two lines, Kunti Maharani is praying, Namasye Purusham Tvadyam Ishwaram Prakite Faram. So she's praying, Namasye Purusham Tvadyam. She's paying her obeisances to a Purusha. And at that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was present, and Kunti Maharani could see Krishna face to face. Prabhupada says that if you practice this Bhakti Yoga, the simple Bhakti Yoga process of chanting 16 rounds and following 4 regulative principles, one day we can come to the platform wherein we can see Krishna face to face, the way Kunti Maharani was seeing Krishna face to face, the way Arjuna was seeing Krishna face to face. It is possible. So every time Prabhupada also stresses, as Vedic scripture stresses, that Krishna is a person, he is a supreme personality, he is not an ordinary person. Why Mayavadis deny the aspect of the Supreme Lord being a person? Because they think that they have the only understanding of a person that they have in their mind is a person like us. And we have birth, death, old age and disease. And obviously, God cannot have birth, death, old age, disease. Right? These are not something that God can possess. He is transcendental to all these things. That even they understand. So, because God cannot have that, and we Purushas have that, so God is not a Purusha. He is impersonal Brahman. And that is how they explain the whole Bhagavad Gita, many of them. But in Bhagavatam, it is very clearly defined. Very clearly it is brought out what kind of Purusha is Krishna. Krishna is Purusham Param. Yajeta Purusham Param. And in this verse, Kunti Maharani is saying, Namasye Purusham Tvadyam. He is not an ordinary Purusha like us. He is the Adi Purusha, the first Purusha, from which all others have come into existence. Ishwaram Prakrite Faram. And Ishwaram means he is the controller, and Prakrite Param. Kunti Maharani is further saying, what kind of a Purusha is Krishna? He is Prakrite Param. He is beyond the material Prakriti. He is beyond the three modes of material nature. Because we cannot see that Purusha, we think there is no Purusha. There is no one out there. Prabhupada gives a nice example in one place, how these three modes of material nature are covering our vision. Now, the three modes of material nature has been created by whom? By Krishna himself. So why something that Krishna has created is covering up Krishna himself? Krishna, we are saying that the Mayavadis, they do not understand Krishna as the Parama Purusha because they are being covered by the three modes of material nature, or the general impersonalists, their illusion. So now three modes of material nature has been created by Krishna, right? So why some energy that Krishna has created is covering up Krishna himself? It should not be. If Krishna has created some energy, it should be facilitating us to understand him. Why Krishna has done this? So Prabhupada gives a nice example, just like the clouds. When clouds are there in the sky, you cannot see the sun, right? And actually the cloud is a creation of the sun itself. How does the cloud come into existence? The sun evaporates the water from the ocean, from the different water bodies, and then the water goes up and settles at cloud, and then the same cloud covers up the sun. But although it covers up the sun, doesn't mean that the sun doesn't exist. Actually, it is not covering the sun. The cloud is covering our vision from seeing the sun. The sun is still there. And a person who is intelligent, a person who has knowledge, knows that although the cloud is covering the sun, and I cannot see the sun now, there is a figure, a form. The sun has a form, right? We can see that. It's a big form. There is a form called the sun existing, which is beyond the clouds. And why the cloud covers us up? Because, we got illusioned and we are here in this material world and we didn't want to serve Krishna, and so it's an illusory energy that is coming in front of us, which is preventing us to see the sun, but an intelligent person knows that it exists. Similarly, Kunti Maharani is saying, you are Purusham Tvadyam and you are Prakrite Faram. You are beyond this Prakriti. Like this, if you see, the entire Bhagavatam talks about the personality of Godhead. Krishna Padanu Sevaya. Another place Bhagavatam says, Krishna Padanu Sevaya. Yudhishthira Maharaj, with reference to Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was serving the lotus feet of the Supreme Person Krishna. Now can Mayavadis interpret Krishna Padanu Sevaya as impersonal? Not possible. Pada means there is a feet. Impersonal means no hands, no eyes, no legs, no feet, nothing. But here it is clearly said, Padanusevaya. Krishna Padamulam Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha. If you serve Krishna Padamulam means if you take shelter of the Pada of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha, you will get freed from all the kleshas. So in this way we see the entire Bhagavatam is filled with such descriptions of Purusham Tvadyam, Adi Purushaha, Pada Seva, and words like this, which very clearly bring out the fact that Krishna, the highest understanding of Krishna is that he exists as a supreme person, as a transcendental person. He is Satchidananda Vigraha. There are so many other places. This is all from the Bhagavatam itself. In many other scriptures it is mentioned that Krishna is the supreme person. And that is the reason why it is very difficult for commentators who do not have the actual understanding of bhakti, of what is bhakti yoga, devotion service. They cannot touch Srimad Bhagavatam. And because the way Vyasadev has written, Kritvanu Kramya, very thoughtfully he wrote it, revised it, rewrote, corrected it, and repeated it, and that's why they cannot touch it. So, Sa Samhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanu Kramya Chatmajam. And then after Vyasadev wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam so thoughtfully, the best of the Vedic literature, what did he do? Chatmajam. He taught it, he taught it to his own son, Shukadev Goswami. Chatmajam, his own son, Shukadev Goswami. And why did he teach it to Shukadev Goswami? Adhyapayam asa nivritta niratam. He taught it to his own son Shukadev Goswami because he was already engaged in self-realization. So this is the verse which is mentioned here, and we all know the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. The great shade Vyasadev, after compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, why Vyasadev compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, what was the need? Here in the purport, Prabhupada gives an explanation of when Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled, and approximately it is dated about 5,000 years back, which is when Kali Yuga started. So what was the need? What caused Srila Vyasadeva to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam 5,000 years back? Vyasadeva saw that when Kali Yuga was approaching, because the Acharyas, Vyasadeva is not an ordinary person, he is Trikalagna, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, the literal incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can see the past, present and future. The great sages have that vision that they can see the past, the present and the future as well. So Vyasadeva, with his spiritual vision, could see that people in Kali Yuga will be very fallen. There are 5 symptoms that he saw, which is again there in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krayena alpa ayushaha. He saw that people will have very short lives. Krayena alpa ayushaha. Kalau asmin yuge janaha mandaha. People will be very lazy. Mandaha. Sumanda matayo. Sumanda matayo means, now when you're lazy, you don't want to do things, you want to take guidance from others so that you can know how to do it if you don't know how to do it. But it is saying Sumanda Matayo. Even if they take guidance from others, they will be misguided. Sumanda Matayo. And Manda Bhagya. Manda Bhagya means they will be unlucky. And above all this, Upadritaha. They will be very, very disturbed. So imagine, actually we are all living in this age, and we can all see the symptoms very clearly, all these 5 symptoms in this age. We can see it in our day-to-day life. We all have short lives, we are lazy, we are misguided. That's why we don't have faith also these days. Whom to take guidance from, because we are unsure whether we'll get the right guidance. We are unlucky, 4th, and we are always disturbed, full of anxiety. So when Vyasadeva saw that these are the kind of people, these will be the symptoms of people in Kali Yuga, he felt very compassionate for them. A great sadhu, this is one of the symptoms of a great soul. He is very compassionate for the suffering souls. And he is always scheming, he is always planning how to lift the suffering souls out of this dense illusion. How to give them something that will help them get freed from the material sufferings. So Vyasadeva also, out of compassion for them, he thought it is best. Until that time, none of the Vedic literatures were in written. All the Vedic literatures were all existing orally. Imagine if you were to run your company or in your office, everything orally. Nothing in paper, no email. Not possible, right? And imagine if you can run your company, run your office, run all your day-to-day work orally only. Without email, without notes, without files. What will you call yourself as? Genius. Right? You will all be super expert, super brilliant, super intelligent. If all of us work very nicely without any paper, without written document. It's not possible. The whole government system is everything is written. Because that's the only thing which stays and, which doesn't get further diluted or contaminated or changed or. So Vyasadeva, until that time, imagine, until the previous yuga, that is Dwapar Yuga, the entire Vedic knowledge was existing orally. And they were living much more happier, much more peaceful life, much better life than us. So you can imagine the amount of contamination that has set in this Kali Yuga, that in spite of all these written instructions, we are still living worse than people of the previous ages. This is the meaning of Kali Yuga. So Vyasadeva saw that people in future are going to be like this, so fallen. So out of compassion for them, he thought, okay, now with these symptoms, Vedic knowledge cannot continue in an oral format. It has to be actually written down. When it's written down, it is going to be as it is. And that's how he started compiling the Vedic literatures. And Vyasadeva, he wrote many Vedic literatures, and after writing all the Vedic literatures, he had still not written Srimad Bhagavatam yet. He had written all the literatures except Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the only literature remained to be written. The Vedas he divided into 4, he wrote the Mahabharata, he wrote all the Vedic literatures, and after that also he was not finding satisfaction. He was not feeling happy. He felt that something is missing. And what is it that is missing? He started contemplating. And it was at that time that Narad Muni came in, and Narad Muni explained to him that, dear Vyasadeva, although you have written all the Vedic literatures, you have actually not touched upon the most important aspect of spiritual life, and that is writing something that is untainted by any materialism, that speaks about complete pure devotional service to Krishna. And that is what is missing. You have not described the transcendental glories, the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the Vedas are basically, there are two paths. Here it is mentioned in the purport, Pravritti Marga, Nivritti Marga. Nivritti Marga means the path of enjoyment. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and then finally Moksha. Nivritti Marga means we all want to enjoy. We have certain desires, we want to enjoy those desires, and to enjoy them, there are certain methods mentioned in the Vedic scriptures. You do this, you get this benefit, you do this, you get this benefit. And this is all Vyasadeva had written up until that point. That if you have this desire, this is what it should be done. And so Narad Muni said that actually this is not going to help. People are already suffering, and this is further going to entangle them in their suffering. Because if we engage in the path of Pravritti Marga, that is the path of enjoyment, then it is going to bind us. We are going to get bound in karma. And as long as we have some karma in store with us, we are always going to remain in this material world, suffering birth, death, old age and disease. There is no freedom. If we want to get rid from this cycle of birth and death, we all have to become akarma. Akarma means we all have to become free from all reactions. And that freedom from all reactions can come only if we are serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we are doing anything else, we are all getting bound up in some reaction. It could be a good reaction also. It's like you give somebody something, you actually get a reaction. The reaction you get is, you're going to get back that thing. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton's third law of motion. So, even doing good in this material world is actually binding you to come to this material world and enjoy that good. But along with enjoying that good, there is birth, there is death, there is old age, there is disease, there is adhyatmic klesha, there is adi bhautik klesha, there is adi daivik klesha, all types of sufferings. So, this so-called material good is actually not good. It is actually bad because it is binding us. And this good is very, very transient, very, very temporary, very, very limited. If we engage in the other marga, that is nivritti marga. Nivritti marga means the path of self-realization, the path of material renunciation, and engage in His service, in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we can be freed from all these material sufferings. And what can we be freed from? Shoka, moha, bhaya, apayaha. We can be freed from shoka, we can be freed from lamentation, we can be freed from illusion, we can be freed from bhaya, fearfulness. We cannot be freed from these things if we engage in any other methods. So Narad said, Vasudev, that you had written those books, and those books are not going to help. You have to write something which describes about Nivritti Marga. And that is when Vyasadev wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the final compilation, is the best work of Srila Vyasadeva. And as I was saying, this is the saram, this is the essence of all Vedic literatures. In Bhagavatam, you have all topics mentioned. There is nothing, it has got topics from all walks of life. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it has got 18,000 verses and 12 volumes, each volume this big. So even if you want to research or find out something about economics, find out something about history, find out something about sociology, everything is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That is why Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Vedic Encyclopedia. That means that which will give you knowledge of everything. So, if we just, that is why every day we read Srimad Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very important. Nashta Prayeshu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. All the dirty things that are there within our heart will all get cleansed, will all get destroyed, will all be removed, erased if we hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Srila Prabhupada, when he was going to America in the year 1965, just before leaving, it was about a month before leaving, he was taking a stock of all his possessions that he is going to take with him to America. Imagine if you're going to America and you're going with a mission to preach and you're going to be there for a year. You'll have a lot of things, a lot of your personal belongings to take with you, right? It's a cold country. Your woolen itself will be so much and so many things. But when Prabhupada took a stock of his things, he had only one small suitcase, one umbrella, and some stock of cereals, some food to eat, little bit. That's all. That was his only possession. And he was completely dependent on Krishna. He didn't know what he will eat. Those days, going to America means, people would have an idea, America means only meat, and we don't know whether proper vegetarian food will be available. So Prabhupada was ready to live on boiled potatoes and cereal, and that's all he was ready, he was prepared. But although these possessions were very meager, very little, just a suitcase and the stock of cereal and just one umbrella, Prabhupada had one more possession with him. And what was that? He was carrying with him 200 volumes of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in many, many trunks. And this 200, and those days Bhagavatam was in 3 parts. So he was carrying 600 copies, all in huge trunk, and a separate company was involved in shipping it, in boarding it on the ship. And when Prabhupada would think of this, he's carrying this many Srimad Bhagavatam, that would give him peace, and that would give him confidence. He had printed a flyer, which about 600 copies of flyer, and that flyer was Srimad Bhagavatam, message of peace and goodwill from India. And so this was what Prabhupada had in his heart, that he was going to the United States and he was taking a strong message with him, and he had strong faith in the words of his spiritual master, that if the message of Srimad Bhagavatam touches the heart of a person, then it will change him. And Prabhupada was very determined to take this message and give it to the people. During those days, in India, it was different. In India, if you, a Swamiji who goes and, a sadhu is well known in India, a sannyasi is well known in India. In 1965 also it used to be the same. Of course it was much more well known in India. A Swamiji with a saffron, a sadhu with a saffron cloth, if he goes and he could meet the Prime Minister, he could meet anybody because of the respect that he had, the respect of a sannyasi, the respect of Bhagavatam. So in India it was different, but imagine Prabhupada was going to the West. In the West, nobody knew of a Swami, nobody knew of sannyasi, there were no temples, there was no culture, there was nothing like that, and Prabhupada was going there. He was going from a known place to an unknown place, and he was like not knowing what Krishna has planned for him, but every time he would think of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, it would give him peace and happiness. So here it is said that the synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Pravritti Marga was condemned by Narada. That path is the natural inclination for all conditioned souls. You see, the theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of human being. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease. So we are all undergoing some materialistic disease. And we can very well classify these, any kind of a disease in the material world is a materialistic disease. And the biggest materialistic disease is basically our desire to enjoy our senses. And desire to gain profit, material profit, and desire to, all these and other kind of material diseases like Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, all these are material diseases. And the simple solution is Srimad Bhagavatam. There was once Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when this happened somewhere in West Bengal or in West Bengal or Puri, I can't exactly remember. There was one place when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was going to one place, and in that place there was a tree. In that village there was a tree, and he saw that people were coming and worshipping that tree. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur was wondering, why are people worshipping the tree? And then he came to know that in that tree there used to live a ghost, and people would worship that ghost. And why they would worship that ghost? Because that ghost has some extraordinary powers, this black magic art and all these kind of karma kandiya things. And what was that? The common thing that was going around in the village was that if you worship that ghost in the tree, that ghost would make an influence on the mind of the judge in the court, and he would influence that judge to give a favorable judgment in the favor of the person who is worshipping that ghost. So these kinds of things were happening. People would do all types of, materialistic things, and they would want to win, and then obviously the case would be filed because they have done things which is out of law, and then they would go and worship that ghost and pray to the ghost to influence the mind of the judge so that the judge would give an argument in his favor. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what is all this nonsense going on? He totally discredited it. But people were not listening. So people will not listen. What could he do? He has to somehow drive away the ghost. So how did he drive away the ghost? So around that time it so happened that one person came to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and he requested Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to preach to him about Krishna Katha. So what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, he took that person and he took him under the tree where that ghost was residing. And he recited the Srimad Bhagavatam. And after 1 month, when it was a 1 month period of recitation, after 1 month period when the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for 1 month, at the end of that, the tree crashed and it was burnt into ashes. Can't exactly remember whether it was burnt into ashes, but the tree actually crashed and the ghost disappeared. And this was an actual pastime recorded which happened about 150 years back. And when this incident happened, and when all the devotees, all the people living in the village saw that, they gained faith in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And from that day onwards, everybody started hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So it's very important that we hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day. And we have the Srimad Bhagavatam book with us. Every day morning, if we make it a rule that set aside 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hearing Srimad Nityam, that's why Bhagavatam itself is mentioning Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. We are all struggling to get all the abhadra within our heart cleansed. And what better method than simply hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Tad rasamrita triptas, and it is so nectarian, it is so nice. We naturally want to hear very nice, pleasing things, is it not? And there's nothing more nectarian, nothing more pleasing than hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So when you are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it is very pleasing to the ear, very satisfying to the heart, and at the same time, shoka moha apayaha. All these contaminations disappear from the heart. We'll end here. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki.